Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Sean Atwood channel. We are live, I believe, for the first, is it the first or second time this year, John, we're finally back on a Sunday with Crime Theory, and it's good to see you, brother.
Well, last time was with Beverly, so I don't know whether that was before or after Christmas, but it's good to be back. It's good to have a bit of routine again.
Well, you're looking fabulous, sir. Fill us in on
you.
what's been going on with you before we dive into this evening, but I'm sure you've got a lot to tell us about. So what's been happening with yourself?
Yeah, it's gone mad because of my position and the stuff that I've been talking about for the last decade. Initially, because I don't with these gangs, and we're going to term them GGs, and you know that people need to sort of draw an inference what we're on about here. Yep. That's all in popular culture now because it is backing that Elon Musk has given to Tommy Robinson and other people who've been speaking about it. But my narrative is slightly different, and hopefully we'll get to explain that. But because it's come out again, and the fact that I gave evidence at the independent inquiry, the government independent inquiry, that the interest in the stuff that I've been speaking about on your show, on Sean's show, on other podcasting has just gone through the roof. Not only that, national media, I've been contacted by the BBC. I've been approached by two independent filmmakers for national television to start talking about. Yeah, it's gone absolutely crazy, but there's a narrative, you see, and there's a narrative, and it's providing I talk about the GGs and the ties to Islam, they'll run with it, right? But the moment I talk about the bigger picture, which is that this is organised criminality that has been going on for a very, very, very seriously long time, and it doesn't know any religious, economic boundaries, they subdue it. So I've even been putting social media posts on about a GG that was run by a woman that preyed on young kids from inner London. Because the strange thing is the Home Affairs Select Committee held Sadiq Khan to task as to why there's not been one case of a GG in London, right? But there has, because I've been talking about it on your show, on Sean's show, and at the National Inquiry, right? But they don't want to know because it doesn't involve Islam or Muslim or whatever. Bang, they shut it down. So there is definitely a narrative.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Running.
That's interesting because when you have a look, John, at the rap sheets on Google of all the press releases of all the GGs that have been caught, they do try. It's almost like with missing kids, how it's usually the two-parent family of a single child that goes missing that gets the news and all this kind of stuff from back in the day. It does seem like there is only one type of GG that seems to be getting reported on.
And the fact of the matter is that when Kemi Batanoff, or whatever her name is, the shadow prime minister, was going on about it, and they were saying about a new inquiry. Well, they had an inquiry, and it, whether people were happy with the outcome or not, it was quite intense, and it was very comprehensive. Now, what the public need to understand, it's an inquiry. It inquires. It does not investigate. So no one is going to get nicked. What the government needs is an investigation, a National Crime Squad-led investigation into failures and malfeasance within the public sector, i.e. the investigators, the police. They're not going to do that. And this is something that I've been pushing for a long time. An investigation, not an inquiry, right? Now, the fact that the Muslim GGs were only mentioned a percentage of the times is because they committed a percentage of those atrocities against young kids. 80% of children that were trafficked into this criminality, the R criminality of kids, were done within the family or those with the prescribed parental responsibility for them kids. So we're on about the family, dysfunctional families, and we're on about those that had parental responsibility, maybe foster parents, maybe adoptive parents, or the social services. They commit 80% of these crimes against children. Now the public want to push it all on.
When you say 80%, when you say 80%, are we talking about all of the GG related crimes, or are we talking about transportation as a whole?
Well, just that form of criminality against children as a whole. For the exploitation of children, 80% of it is done within the family network or the implied family network. So we can extend that to social services and all that. Now these Muslim GGs were picking on kids that I would say most of them have come from that demographic of kids, from the care homes and things like that. Do you know what I mean? But this is a very, very important message that we need to give out. Now, when the police, for political reasons, fail to investigate these crimes committed by the Kashmiri minicab drivers in provincial towns such as Bradford, Aylesbury, Rotherham, Rochdale, and all that, right? They're not just letting down the young white girl victims. They're also letting down the Kashmiris. Not that the survivors of this abuse care for them, and I get maybe the animosity there, but this is very important. When you get PDF files, they're what they're called, and we mentioned this before, they're what they're called trisexuals. They are not heterosexual. They are not homosexual. They are not bisexual. They are trisexual, which in the vernacular means that they will try anything, right? So if their dream, their target is a prepubescent young white girl, right? That's what they want. But if there's a girl over that age that's now into puberty, then they'll take that. If there's no girl but there's a young boy who's prepubescent, they'll take that, right? So they'll do anything, right? That because they're trisexual. But what we are failing is that these guys, and I tell you what, I will bet whatever I've got in my pocket, which ain't much, but that these PDF files, because this is what they are, that are doing it to these young white girls, will also be doing it to their own daughters, their own nieces. So we've got to look at this, that they are, and they probably are, abusing their own children as well as other people's children, because this is what PDF files do. And I'm almost certain that with the Rochdale inquiry, that the main abuser there was also abusing his daughter. So you'll be letting down these children. So if we do the three monkeys and all that sort of, it don't exist. Let's not talk about it. Right? You're going to let down the kids. So if there is a pro Kashmiri Pakistani stance that there's nothing that the government can say that will ever denigrate this demographic, that they're perfect, it doesn't happen, and it's haram and it doesn't, all this, which is a lie, right? But they are also preventing themselves looking further, because there's girls within that community, because all children are the gifts from God, all children. And no children should be abused, whether it's white girls or it's Kashmiri girls, Nigerian. And the other thing that we're forgetting is that, some of the most vulnerable, and when they say it's quite the most vulnerable in society, these girls, no, the most vulnerable are the disabled. They are the most vulnerable, and especially the non-verbal disabled. And they get it bad, them kids, some of them, So when we concentrate on one demographic, we're concentrating on one demographic of offender. We're concentrating on one demographic of victim. And we're not doing justice to the bigger pie chart, which extends outside of these girls that have been, and God bless them, that have been captured by these PDF file Kashmiri grooming gangs. It goes bigger. And I genuinely believe that there is a political lobby behind this. And it's not doing the survivors on the whole general picture any justice at all. And we have seen that. It's like Elon Musk. If you are doing this for the right reasons, and you genuinely are concerned that the British government isn't being extreme right wing, it's just doing the right thing, right? Then look at it from a bigger picture. You had it in your country with the Fantasy Island with Mr. E, right?
Yep.
We've had it over here. You've got Fred West and his shenanigans. Fred West, the tentacles of that man go far. You know, there's more to this guy than we know, and we mentioned it on an exclusive we did on this show, Ron, because there was nearly 1,000 videotapes were seized, and not one was ever viewed evidentially. 1,000 tapes. There would have been, in my opinion, snuff films in there, definitely PDF file films, not one. There were rumours that he was in with the local police, and he died. He was like a bargain basement Poundland version of Mr. E over in the States.
I agree.
We got this P. Diddy thing coming out, and like I said to you, it will explode. The government will take ownership, and then you'll never hear from it again, which is what's happened. It's exactly what I said would happen is what's happened, because it's what happened over here. If we're talking about celebrities, I don't care for celebrities, and anyone who follows my stuff will realise that. I've never been to a pop concert. I've never been to a football match. I'm not interested in this organised stuff. It don't mean nothing to me, right? But if we are to look at this social ladder, okay, you've got celebrities wherever they may lie, but let's take it higher and higher. Let's take it up to the decision makers, the politicians, and in this country, we've got the House of Parliament, we've got the Commons, and then we've got the Cabinet. You know, the real decision makers, the PM's Cabinet and House of Lords. We had a massive disclosure, right? We had Dolphin Square, we had Elm Guest House, right? There was a social worker called Chris Fay who produced the Elm Guest House list, which they can't discredit. We've got the Reigns list, which goes on about SRA perpetrators, which names members of the cabinet on there, right? We've got Dolphin Square, which went up higher and higher and higher, right? There's a guy who's put a video out, an ex-gangster villain, blah, 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 that. Probably Sean's interviewed him. I'm not going to denigrate the guy because I'm standing by what he said. He said in a recent video, a guy called Ray Hill, and he's turned around and said something that I've alluded to many times. And he said that you know, the Craig twins were using former celebrity gangster John Bindom, who was having an affair with Princess Margaret. John Bindom was supplying, according to Ray Hill, supplying the Craig twins with young boys, ages from 5 to 6. Now, come on, it's been the elephant in the room for long enough. In every single film, in every single interview, even with these gangsters, they allude to it, yet they never hit it hard on the nose. Not one film. Reggie Craig was married to that girl. He never even had sex with her. He never had sex because he weren't interested sexually in her. There were so many rumours that they were PDF files. This guy, Ray Hill, was just smashed out of the water, and he's gone on and said it. But the importance here is their connection to the supplier of this so-called hard man, John Bindom. Now, if what Ray Hill's saying is true, and maybe he is, I think he is, and he was supplying kids, but he was also having an affair with Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister. So we can now directly connect procurers of children to the royal family through this one guy's admission. And, you know, that's a brave statement that he's made. Now, I'm only repeating it, what's said. But if that's the case, this is a massive scandal. So Elon Musk, look into that as well, because it starts going very dark very quickly. Okay. And then, and the thing is, what we've done on this show, we have connected so many people. We went on about the missing girl, Moira Anderson, up in Scotland, in Coatbridge, just outside of Glasgow, many decades ago. But at the same time, we had Fred West there, you know, and then we were looking at the girl Leslie Mulseed, who went missing in Yorkshire, and the copper that covered up this horrific murder. And I strongly say it's a ritualistic murder of Leslie Mulseed due to her injuries and those connected to her. Well, look, right? The guy covered up the
one second, John. Case. We're gonna get in to some updates on these cases and some more connections. I just want to wind it back a second, right? So when we're talking about the GGs and we're talking about a certain ethnic group, that seems to be prominently reported on as being part of these GGs. I need to talk to you a little bit about data analysis here, okay? So when we look at the PDF files and the trafficking and the RN of children as one entirety, right? You are completely correct when you say 80% of it is through the home and things like this. I think when I analyze this data, John, I look at it from the point of view of organized groups who are doing this for self gratification, and then there's individuals who are doing this for profit, and then there's single individuals, whether it's a family member or a lone predator, if you will. So for me, when we dial it down into the gangs who are targeting for non-profit, shall we say, it's this, this inner circle that these individuals are passed around. Do you not feel that it is quite heavily one-sided when it comes to these groups? I don't mean the whole, and I don't mean the whole situation, because trust me, the independent single white male takes the crown jewel in the majority of the crimes that happen to children around our country, if I'm not mistaken, right? But when it comes to these gangs, John, it does seem like it is.
Well, yeah. On the data collected, and on right now, I was informed by a journalist that Nick Griffin, who was I think the head of the British National Party, he sort of delved into some sort of criminality analysis involving ethnic groups and all that, and his findings, was what I was told, were across all different religious demographics.
Sure.
And he was told by the media, can't we just put it on the Muslims? And no, but that's not how it is. But the same thing was said to me. The same thing was said to me. I was asked all the time, but what about Muslim grooming gangs? And I said, listen, I was an investigator in this form of criminality, and there was two of us for London, right? Yeah. The most diverse city on the planet, right? One of the most densely populated cities in the Western world. Yes, there were Muslim guys. There were Bangladeshis in the East End of London, in Bethnal Green, that were pimping out a Hindu girl, right?
Yep.
That was the extent of the reported and detected Muslims grooming GGs, right? GGs. Oh, nearly right. Now the one that was doing the most of it in London, in inner London, was a woman called Fiona Walsh, aka Foxy, a white woman, and her cohort was a Jamaican guy, right? So we had a white English woman and a Jamaican guy, and the clientele ranged from Jamaican crack dealers to white builders from the North and the Midlands, through to Middle Eastern wealthy guys in the evening. So it was across the board, and this criminality is always across the board. So it wasn't represented, but all the press were interested in was the Muslim side of it. Now, I put out a post a little while back saying, look, you've got to look that this is a bigger thing than just this category. The post was removed because it's not fitting with some I don't know, nefarious.
So it sounds to me, John. It sounds to me like
look. If I was in investigating in Bradford or in Luton, of course, the majority of not just of that sort of crime, but also criminality in general, will be from them groups. Now, I've been told by members of the travelling and gypsy community that there is a GG gang operating within them, predominantly run by Irish travellers that are doing it with their girls. We hear nothing of that. We hear absolutely nothing of that. We hear nothing of the Lithuanians that were doing it back in the late 90s, early 2000s. You know, the majority of the brothels and the girls in there were from Lithuania. And then prior to that was from Poland. So we're getting them all. I understand that these are a reality and these are a plague, and they are deliberately protected by local councillors, and it's deliberately not reported on in Parliament.
Yeah.
And It's the same with ritual abuse. We're getting more and more police officers now speaking out on a global level about the reality of ritual abuse. But the moment you speak about it, you're attacked, as I well know. And there was a politician called Jeffrey Dickens who stood up and he screamed about this, about ritual abuse. He was shut down and he was denigrated
Yeah.
his career. Roger Cook, on the Cook Report, in the early 90s, late 80s, did a program on Muslim GGs. He confronted them. Why weren't they addressing it then? Why? And he exposed it, and nothing was done about it.
So,
You look online on YouTube, you'll find a documentary.
Let me throw two things at you here, right? So, first of all, it sounds like the narrative in this country is gearing up for a patsy for all of the crimes against children, right? Like if they're going to pin it on someone, that sounds like they're wanting to pin it on this one group, right? Now, you previously had said that there was this, one of the biggest GG operators was this woman that you were talking about, right? Who was a white lady. Now, it sounds like she was facilitating commodities for a free market, right? So she was getting these children to facilitate a free market of anyone who was willing to pay for those services, if you see what I'm saying, right? Okay. Whereas with the GGs that I've looked into, it's facilitating a want within their own culture, right? And it's not an open market that some of these young girls.
Okay. But which goes back to what I said earlier.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I mean, look, when you've got organised criminality, you've got money. So I would have thought that clients for these young girls in these provincial towns with the MGG gangs, I reckon it would have included people in local councils and things like that. I reckon they would, and there would have been an exchange of money, because otherwise it's not worth their while doing it. But if they have a proclivity within their culture for PDF filing, which is what you're alluding to here, then their own children are at risk. So when social services, when local government and the weak-minded police officers in these, which is something that came out of the documentary that Tommy Robinson did do, he actually showed that these police officers were colluding with these criminal gangs, and good on him for doing that. Well done. That should be now part of a national investigation into malfeasance in the public office. But when the police failed to clamp down on those PDF file GGs, right, they are then also failing girls within that community. Yeah. Because it will be a proclivity. Yeah. For that to go on within that community, and that's unconstitutional and it's illegal, and covering that up is malfeasance. So this is why there shouldn't be an investigation, an inquiry. We've had an inquiry. It's given the fact as much as we know it. They had the Truth Project, whether that harnessed information or not. And if they do it again, it will just be a money-making scam for the lawyers and the barristers, right? So sod that. Let's have a National Crime Squad unit that is based on looking at malfeasance within social services, within local councils, and within the police force. That's what we should be having. And Kemi Shadow Prime Minister, come on, are you that ill-informed that you want an inquiry and not an investigation? This is shocking. And of course, with the right wing now that's building up, we got to be careful here, because I've been at some of these rallies, and I know growing up in the 70s and coming from mixed Southern European parentage. My father was Sicilian. Right, I used to go very, very dark. Not so much now; it's a winter. But in the summer, as a kid, I would. My grandfather was one of the Moors. He was black. He looked like a black Arab. Fresh out of the Sahara. That was his colour. That was my grandfather. Now, I used to get called a PAKI as a kid growing up, right? Okay. I wasn't. I didn't understand what it was, and I never knew. And it was rough times. But that ignorance hasn't gone away. So these people, they won't see the difference between a Sri Lankan, a Sikh, a Hindu. They think that everyone is a Muslim Kashmiri, and every one of them does that. And I've experienced that at some of these rallies, because we're making excuses for ignorance here. There's a lot of ignorant people out there, and also in the survivor community, there's a lot of people that have got a lot of damage, and they can't sometimes make that reasonable decision due to the fact of emotional damage. And I think we're going to see a push to far right political opinion if we're not too careful. A
Okay.
balance needed to be held here, right? And what we've got to look at when you investigate this sort of criminality, PDF file criminality,
Yeah.
it's different to every other bit of dishonest and violent crime investigation, because the rest of it is usually, like I always say, the lower and the working classes that are doing it for financial gain, for whatever, for selfish means,
Yeah.
right? And they will keep within their own little clique. When you're dealing with this, you're dealing with emotionally damaged people with a proclivity to abuse kids, right? And it doesn't know there are Jews that do it, there are Muslims that do it, there are
100%.
Catholics. We put it all on the Catholic priest. No. Imams do it, right? Christians do it, pagans do it, Jews, they all do it in certain segments of that community. And it's what brings them all together. And we are dealing with the most dangerous level of organized criminality. And this is why there is a need to take people out the game that are quite high up and know stuff, like Mr. E out in the States, like Fred West.
Yeah.
Read between the lines here. It is the only criminality that is politically influential.
Yeah.
The only criminality.
Well,
And it's always been used as a bargaining tool, as a blackmail tool. So this is my point to Elon Musk. Look at this bigger. You're doing microcosm here. Go macrocosm. See it for what it is. It's like when police deal with drug dealers. All they used to nick when the young black kids that used to. This is in the 90s, that came over from Jamaica to sell crack, right? And they were pushed into it, selling crack on the street, and they would call it dealing by mouth. 10 rocks in their mouth. They get caught, they get 8-9 years. They never caught the Kurdish, the Turkish mafia boys that were bringing in kilo after kilo. I did.
Yeah.
And it's a world of grief. It's dangerous.
Okay.
They always pick the low-hanging fruit.
I've got two more questions on this one for you, right? So when we talk about the
Sorry, let's go. That's just a buzz thing.
Yeah, that's fine. So when we talk about specific groups within these GG, the big GG issue, right? And specifically the one that Elon Musk is pointing out, right? I think the police have let down so many parents of children when it comes to even taking the information to investigate some of these crimes. And again, here's the thing. We're going to have people included in this who are PDF files, and they've always been PDF files. And like you say, John, their own children are at risk within these GG gangs, right? But then there seems to be a subculture that's entered this country where certain individuals feel like young white children are theirs to just prey upon. And it seems to be almost less of a human transportation, big criminality thing, rather than it being more of a social thing that they do. And it's been explained to me by some people that they would never, the mindset of these individuals is they would never do that to the children of their own culture.
No, this is where it's wrong. They will.
Okay.
They will. They won't overtly do it.
Okay.
Right. But right now, okay. Now you'll get a guy.
Yep.
When I look on social media, all these people that now are they're fed up of the UK and immigration, so they go and live in Thailand, right, which is Asia, which is is full of foreigners if you look at it that way, right? Yeah. Right. So there's a thing called the anonymity of offending.
Okay.
So that in order to commit a crime, there's two elements in law. There's the actus rea, right, which is the physical element of offending, and then there's a mens rea, rea, right? Which is the intent, the criminal intent. This is why castration of a PDF file won't work. Because although you'll take away the chemical element, you're not taking away the mens rea element. All right. So it's all about the intention, what they do. Now you'll get these tourists, these tourists, right? That go abroad for offending, because when they're abroad, the anonymity allows them to get away with it, and also they can dehumanize the victim and say, right, they're not one of us. If I don't do it, someone else is only going to. So a guy goes out to Thailand, right, which is the number one prime place. So there was a podcast the other day was saying that anyone who says that their dad or their uncle or their granddad comes out here because he likes the food and the weather, he's a liar. He comes out here for the young girls and the young boys, right? So this guy wants to do it to a child, right? He's too frightened to do it over in this country. He's socially inept. He's not connected in the right circles, but it's there, right? And he's not given the opportunity. If he's given the opportunity, he'll do it, but the opportunity doesn't rise because he's not in that sort of clique. But if he flies out there, all of a sudden the anonymity does it, right? So he'll find what he wants. He'll be racked with guilt, right? Absolutely racked with guilt, and he'll be disgusted with himself, but he'll still do it. Now, what we got to look at is a hurdle, and that hurdle's this high. So the next day, he hates himself. He might go and drink alcohol, get drunk because he's got self-loathing. But the next day, once he sobers up, that hurdle has now dropped, right? And he'll do it again, and then it drops, and then it drops, and then he end up like Sidney Cook, where it's normal.
Of course,
it's normal, because he's denigrating his victims. They're not of his culture. They're not of this. And this is pretty much what this lot are doing. But I'm telling you now, if they have a proclivity and to do it to a child, they will do it to their own. If no one, and I'm telling you now, there will be girls in that community that are being massively let down. And the girls that they preyed on, the white girls from these areas on these estates and all that, and the families of these girls, you need to be pushing for an investigation, because the police, this is corruption at its highest, most violent level, and the police have deliberately ignored it. They haven't investigated it. It gets underreported. They victim blame. The social services haven't done their job, and the community leaders have deliberately perverted the course of justice. And one point I want to make here, I know I'm getting a bit dominant here.
No, you're good. You're good.
I need to stress, because I'm
trying to learn to shut up and let people speak, John. So this is great for me tonight.
No, that's okay. But we had a case come in, and it came in on the fax machine back in the day, and it was a child had been AR'd, right? So the job come in, it come through to myself and my colleague, and we said, right, the suspect's name's there, right? He was an imam in a mosque in the East End of London, right, in a place called Stepney, right? A massively Muslim Bangladeshi area, and he did teaching with these groups. There's a special name for these schools. I can't remember what it is now. And he had AR'd one of these boys. So we said, right, let's go and do him. And we had a little kit we would take. We had a team we would take. And that's it. We're on our way to kick his door in, right? He's coming in. We get stopped by a senior officer and said, no. There's a protocol come in now. And we were, what are you on about protocol come in? And they had to have, because it involved, they said it was because it was a theological, it was a religious suspect.
Sure.
Nonsense. It was because it was a Muslim suspect. Sure. We had to have a meeting, a community meeting with a community leader and social services. And then after a week's time, and this bloke was given all the heads up that you could give someone, right? He was then invited in for an interview with his solicitor. Ordinarily, with a suspect with his crime, would have gone round there, his door would have been matchwood, he would be chewing the carpet, and there wouldn't be anything left on his shelves, right?
Yeah.
And that would have been a fact. So we have experienced it, and so the mayor of London, these local community mayors, the mayor of Tower Hamlets, and the police officers high up, not the likes of myself and my colleague, my sergeant or my inspector, not that. It goes higher than this. They had this unilateral agreement that they would deliberately pervert the course of justice because it involved a Muslim and he was a man of the cloth, their cloth. So it's been going on a long, long time, and it's been going on down here.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, John, right, is I watched a video by a guy, I think his name's DJ Media or something like this. He's one of those dudes that goes walking about with a camera. He reports on the riots. He reports. I don't know. It's an interesting form of content. There is a name for it, and I know a lot of people aren't that in anyway, right? So he went down to a hotel in England, John, and this video was like watching a new business plan for human transportation unfolding in front of my eyes. Okay. Now, you know yourself, you drive up and down the motorways, you tend to have like a little chef, a garage, and some sort of little hotel, whether it's like a privately owned little something. There's always, it's a common occurrence, right? It's a motorway thing. And DJE, yeah, that's the one, Neil. So this hotel was one of the hotels that was full of asylum seekers, illegal immigrants that have come over, right? And the whole hotel was filled with men, as they were referred to as military age men. And dude, if you've not got a hotel full of people with a petrol station attached to it, what better solution for any form of illicit activity? What's the one place in the world where if cars are pulling in all the time, no one's going to pay any attention to is a freaking garage, mate, right? A petrol station. Okay. And then this petrol station has a back gate that leads into this hotel, right? And at one point in this video, he's asked to stop filming because there's a car full of children sat outside this hotel.
Oh my word.
Now, nobody really goes too much more into it, right? It could have been kids of one of the people that lives there, right? But what I'm saying to you is, in fact, like, do you know what? Let's say it was one of the kids of the people. Let's make it all out very innocent, and let's just look at the narrative of this. Because if you pull into a petrol station, John, right, and then come out of that petrol station and pull into a hotel with kids in the back of your car, no one is thinking that's suspicious, unless the kids are doing something suspicious, right? It's a fairly common thing to happen. And I just started to worry because the reason that he was down at this hotel was multiple men from this hotel were caught by the police taking photos of children from cars outside the local school. And
yeah, I mean, I do a lot with offenders, ex-offenders, things like that. And one guy that I was interacting with was a coxswain for the ribs that bring in the illegal migrants onto the beaches of Kent.
Okay.
And I said to him, well, how does it work? I said, you know, where'd you go from? Because I wanted to find the beach and go out and do a pants swim as they were loading the boat out. That was my plan. I was going to go out there with my my bodyguard guy, as he were, and you know, so he could do the camera and keep a bag. But I was going to film, find out when he was doing, he was going to do a run and go out there and film myself as they're loading up. And I thought they went from Calais or St. Gat's. No. He said, no, we don't. He said, if we leave the rib, it takes about 48 to 50 people in this rib. He said, if I leave from Dover, he said, the French Coast Guard stop us. From Calais, the French Coast Guard stop us and we get in trouble. He said, we go from Le Touquet, which is further around the peninsula. I think they call it the Opal Coast. It's further around the Opal Coast, just past Boulogne. So we go from there because there's not much police presence. He said to load up, go out into the 12-mile limit, and then follow the shipping lane round. It takes 10 to 12 hours, and then when we get into Kent, the sound of Kent, he said straight across. He said he's done nearly 50 runs. He said not once have I been stopped, not once. And I said, well, who's organising it? He said the Kurdish mafia. He said they charged them £2,500 per person. He said it's mainly men, and then that they pay their cash. And he said it's the same boys that used to bring the heroin over. Yeah. Now that with that there was a massive risk. Now they're doing it with people. He said it's mafia. Now I know that, and when you think about them boats, the Straits of Dover are the busiest shipping lanes in the world. The international language of the water and the air is English. They have to communicate with each other. So the boats need to tell each other. They need to be aware of dangers. That there's a rite of passage. So a motor launch has to give way to a sailing launch, and they have to give way to swimmers. So they're always in. So you're not telling me that they're not getting onto Dover Coast Guard saying, Dover Coast Guard, this is the motor vessel so and so. We've got a dinghy with 50 people in it that is perilously crossing our course. Yeah, of course they are.
This couldn't be happening without deep-rooted corruption.
Of course. Or
if it's not corruption, it's straight up sponsored by and being pushed by the government. If it's not corruption, it's a government plan.
Well, look, years ago, there was a drive to get people out of pubs, right, and drinking indoors. Because in the UK we have a pub culture. If you go out to to Eastern Europe, they drink indoors. They drink with their mates. You go to Australia, they drink in there. We have a pub culture, and we have licensing laws. And our licensing laws come back to a backlash from trauma, PTSD, from the battlefields of France from the First World War. Our homeless laws, the Vagrancy Act, comes from the Napoleonic conflicts. So it's all linked in while they build out. Anyway, we as Brits go in the pub. That's our culture, whether people like it or not. We love a pint in the. They wanted to destroy that, like Hitler wanted to destroy the coffee shops prior to the invasion of Poland, right? They did it to us, and they started pushing cheap beer within supermarkets and off licenses. Okay. So in the 80s, we used to marvel at the fact that you could go to France and buy a crate of beer for £10. You can buy that now, 40 years later, right? So what they did was they hyperinflated prices in pubs, and they made drinking alcohol cheaper. And what people started doing was doing these booze cruises, right? And going out to Belgium and buying cheap tobacco and cheap cognac, wine and all that, right? Now, the government realised they're ripping us off here, so they hit the booze cruisers so hard with such draconian measures that people stopped it. It wasn't viable because you were getting hit.
Yeah.
Now, if instead of using a white van and Stenalink ferries or P&O or whatever it was, you decided to get a rib. You decided to bugger off from Folkestone, go over to Ostend, and fill up that rib with 50 crates of brandy and bring it across. You're not even going to get near the shore because customs are going to take your ass straight out the gate. Yeah. So if you replace each crate with a person, now you're allowed in. Yeah. Which is worse because it's trafficking of people. Now,
this is it, John. We are witnessing the largest sanctioned human transportation we've ever witnessed, with America and with Europe and of course the UK. What can I ask you? And we don't have to touch on this long, but I'll be honest with you. I've become almost radicalized with my views on this ever since I watched a little documentary about what's going on in Poland and how they're tackling things. And I don't know if you know what the Prime Minister of Poland has done.
Oh yeah, I've seen him. Yeah, he's hardcore, isn't
he? It's hardcore, right?
Yeah, he does that zero.
When you boil it down, I think all he's doing is his job. He's putting the Polish people first.
But this is what happened in this country. We had laws against rabies, right? You couldn't get. It's like Australia. You couldn't get livestock into this country. It wasn't allowed. It had to be quarantined. Every car got searched. We had the best border. And not only that, this isn't like he's doing that in Poland. But listen, I drove from down to, is it Slovakia, through Poland, through Germany, through Belgium, through France. I didn't get stopped once. So they've got a porous land border, right? And they have. But anywhere else that, and Poland's got about 6 countries bordering it. We were surrounded by water. It's damn difficult to get here, yet it's not anymore.
Right.
But if you go on to what you said a minute ago about these kiddies in these cars, right?
Yeah.
It's nothing new. There were testimonies from taxi drivers that were taking children to Dolphin Square, picking them up from care homes, taking them there. The Belgrave, back then it was called Rochester Road Police Station, right? I was approached in the street by an officer that knew me, and I'd worked with him when we was based at Belgravia. And he said to me, listen, John, he said, before Belgravia was built, which was 1993, I think, prior to that, it was 3 different police stations. It was Rochester Road, Gerald Road, and some other place, I can't remember. Anyway, and he said, Rochester Road, its jurisdiction, it's part of it, its manor, as it were, was Dolphin Square. And because of these taxis bringing these young boys in for parties, and bear in mind, Dolphin Square is the parliamentary residence and also the residence of a lot of celebrities, rock stars, and all these sort of ilk of scumbags. He got all the patrol officers, because it was the most heavily patrolled square footage of London, right? And this was during the times of terrorism and everything, right? There was a bobby on near enough every corner. And the superintendent of Rochester Road, I hope he rots in hell for this, he turned around and said to the officers, anyone stopping any car going in or coming out of Dolphin Square will be disciplined and will answer to me, and it won't be good. So we've had this. We had 2 officers come forward, right, from that were parliamentary protection officers, diplomatic protection officers for Ted Heath. I know we're going back a few decades, but nothing's changed. They kept seeing little boys being brought in to the parliamentary residence of number 10, right, twice a week. Right, the officers knew what was going on, and they had a decision. Right, they thought, well, if we mention it, we'll get moved. It gets covered up. If we don't mention it, carries on. We got to do something. So what they did was, they cut the middleman out, and these kids got delivered, and they were being taken into Ted Heath. Ted Heath come to the door, his bedroom, whatever it might be, and they were being brought up by his valet. And these 2 officers stopped and said, no way. And they said to Ted Heath, we know what's going on here. It stops now. And he backs down, Ted Heath. He said, okay, officers. And then they were ghosted out within a few weeks. They were pensioned off, and they were never heard of again. They came forward. I was given their details. I handed their details to the policing minister. He handed their details to Theresa May. It was never covered up. It was all covered up, right? We've had it, and the reason that it goes on is because it is allowed to go on. There is an agenda, right? There is an agenda. Firstly, who's driving that car with them kids in there? You can't tell me they don't know what goes on. See, I failed to have this from Al Fayed. His security officers were all ex-police. They were all ex-military.
I don't think we've delved into that yet, John. I think
but
we need to one night with Al Fayed, if I'm being honest.
But the demeanor of a child or one of the girly victims of these people, when it's taken there, and then the demeanor and physical condition when they're leaving are going to be 2 different things.
Correct.
Especially if it's a small child, they are going to be in a lot of trouble, physically and otherwise. They're going to be put in a cab. There's a good chance they might urinate themselves, defecate themselves, taken back to the kids' home. And I stand testimony this because these kids were being taken back, and I was interviewing the night staff, and they were saying, yeah, some of these girls have blood pouring out of them, and they're in pain, and because they're on heroin, we have to leave them alone. And they're in terrible troubles when they're brought back after 2 days of absconding from care. It goes on a colossal scale, but I in no way am I denying the existence of these MGG gangs. Of course, they're a scourge, and they are being protected by local government and by central government and by some poxy left-wing agenda, which is trying to call some Islamification or whatever. And but it needs the Muslim community as a whole to stand up and say, we ain't about this. We don't abuse our kids. We don't.
100%.
We don't agree with the doctrine of Aisha at 6, married, and then consummated at 9. We don't do that to our children. There's a guy that helps me a lot. He's a Home Office a psychiatrist, and he deals with a lot of murder cases. When people plead insanity and that, he's the legal expert that comes in. He analyzes them, and I discussed it with him, and he's from Pakistan. He said, none of my family agree with this level of PDF behaviour.
Yeah, of course.
None of my family, to my knowledge, do this with their children. He said, I certainly don't. And he said, so who is allowing it? Who is protecting this small? And it tends to be this Kashmiri, foothill of the Himalaya, Pakistani community that seems to be dominated. But if we go back, we look at like the case of Charlene Downs over in Blackpool, and it was Afghanis that were involved in that, you know. And so,
I mean, there's a lot of British born. There's a lot of British born GGs. You know what I'm saying? That are from these.
Well, second generation ones that are doing
100%, 100%.
Yeah, so in order to allow it, you are facilitating the behaviour of PDFs, but I've experienced this in speaking out and covering it up on a white Christian level, Jamaican level, from the black community. From this, I had someone had the audacity to say, "I'm from Romania. We don't have PDF files in Romania," and I just turned around and I told him to F off. What an absolute load of nonsense.
See, here's where it starts to get interesting for me, right? Because we've got PDF files, right? The traditional predator of children, right? But then it's interesting when we get into cultural mindsets where if you're allowed to do something, okay, or you've been given, a way in to do something, horrific to a child, but it's not necessarily from the traditional mindset of a child predator. It's from a cultural perspective of, well, I'm allowed to do it, so we'll do it, right? It's an interesting split because the reason it's interesting, John, is you end up with predators who don't realize that they're PDF files.
Well, I would disagree there because there has been these anthropological, I can't say the word, studies on this exact argument. Okay. And it was shown that there is not one community on this planet that allows it. And they even went as far as to examine cultures that are outside of the jurisdiction of law. And they went to 2 tribes, one in the Amazon and one in the jungles of Papua New Guinea. And they both had the same approach. These are totally outside of the jurisdiction of law, these communities. And anyone caught fiddling with a kid is banished to the jungle for a term no less than 2 summers, in which they will die. So not at all. They do it because they're perverts and they want to do it. And they can try and manipulate the law all they want around it. It's wrong.
So it's just
when you do this to a child, you destroy your whole culture. You ruin the souls of these children, and they know it. And there is no. So I would say no, that's not the case. I would say they know what they're doing. They can't hide behind these cultural quirks at all. It's fundamentally wrong, and physically it doesn't fit as well. We know that. Who would want to do that to a child? Who would want to? I mean, it's just that the most alien thing. I've had to, as a part of my job, watch these films, these child PDF films. I've had to do it, and I've spent many a dedicated hour at work looking at them, and they're horrific because it's like two things that should never go together. It's like aliens or, or bestiality or something like that. It's two things that don't deserve. And I always give this story of this case that was at Harrow Crown Court of a PDF file that I'd prosecuted, and he had collated many images, and the worst ones were what they call level 5. Now they're category A, which is what someone like Hugh Edwards got caught with, and it's the penetration of a child and bestiality and things like that. And this image was of a child, an infant child. I would say I really couldn't gauge this, but it was maybe a toddler or a big baby, right? And on an altar in an ecclesiastical setting. So it might have been a church, it might have even been a studio. But the person that was R-ing, and this is what was happening, was dressed in priest's garb, right? And it was a shocking image, right? But what made it worse was this guy had communicated backwards and forwards with the sender, and he'd sent it on to other people. And one of the comments were, "She's really getting it. She loves it." Right now, I graded this cat level 5, the worst image you can get, and it was one of many hundreds. And it went before the court, and there was a legal argument that I'd been overzealous in my categorization. Now, it wasn't just me that categorized them, as I was classed as an expert in that sort of genre. The specially trained barrister for the Crown Prosecution Service had also categorized it the same, and as had my superiors. So there had been 3 people who had categorized it. It had gone through 3 filters, and this was a 5, that was a 4, that was a 3, that was a 2, that was a 1.
Yeah.
And off they'd gone. Right. So anyway, there was an argument, because sometimes there's an argument with a child's age. So who's put that on? Someone's put John Wedger the GOAT.
The greatest of all time is what GOAT stands for. Greatest of all time.
I thought it was some sort of satanic thing.
No.
Sorry about that. I thought
I just thought I'd clear that up for you. Yeah.
There was
the greatest of all time, John. The greatest of all time.
In the police, we used to call someone a goat a bit of an idiot. But anyway, but what had happened is that this argument went. So the judge said, right, well, I'm qualified to adjudicate, and I'm going to adjudicate on this, right? So he scrolled through these thumbnails, and as he's going through, he comes across this image because it's quite striking. And he said, "Officer, can you just highlight that? Is this a level 5?" I went, "Yeah." And he had access to this. I said, "Yeah." He made that image, he downloaded it, and he forwarded it on. And you see this judge. He just, when you see, it's a bit like paramedics would experience this, and when you're very young in the police, when you come across fatal accidents or someone's been murdered, dead bodies, and things like that, you're shocked, you're stunned, right? You don't know what to do. It's so frightening, it's alien to you. You sort of freeze a bit. And as time goes on, the more and more you see, the more it's normal. But this judge was like that, and that the colour just went from his face. And then he saw the comments, and he went, why has he written that? Who's written that? I said, well, he has. And he's written, I said, yeah. Can you prove that? I said, yeah, there's the forensic statement proving it's him. And he's admitted it as well. Jeez. And he looked at it, and he couldn't contain his anger. And he had these pot little desk tidy things with pens in it. And he just stands up, this judge, Crown Court learning, he was there. He picked up this pot with his wig on and everything, and he just chucks it straight at the where the perspex glasses, where the defendant is, and it smashes against that. All the pens go everywhere, and he screamed at the top of his voice, "Get that bastard out of here!" And he gave him 10 years, which got argued on an appeal because it was far too high. But my point there is it shocked him so badly that he just couldn't contain himself. Yeah. So this is what we have to do to the public. No one wants to talk about this topic, right? I've been screaming about it for the last 10 years. I've been attacked from the highest to low. Even Theresa May called me a conspiracy theorist, to the policing minister, right? But the one thing that has happened is I've been proven right. I've been proven right. Now, I've listened to the MGG gang thing. I've listened to their argument. I'm on board with it. Yep. But what I'm telling you now, as someone who's spoken publicly on this, who's investigated this, and who's dealt with the survivors of this is far bigger than that little segment of that community. It's far bigger. But if we look at them as a microcosm for the macrocosm, we're going to see that local authorities all across the country have been covering this up. We're going to see that police forces have deliberately under-investigated this at a chief constable level. And we're going to see that there's pressure put on them from the Home Office and for funding, that if they look at this, they investigate this, they won't get the funding. And this is what is needed with an investigation. Stick your inquiries right where the sun don't shine. They don't work, right? No one will get nicked. Let's be pushing. See, Nigel Farage, right, and Reform and all these parties, you want to get ahead, and Elon Musk, you want to get ahead, push for an investigation into malfeasance in a public office, not an inquiry. Stop all this. And you see it with, what's that, GB News inquiry? When no, you don't. You've had that. Nothing came of it. All that happened were 8 years, barristers made a fortune, right? They paid their mortgages off because of the IICSA. Yeah. Right. 100%. And then there was cover-ups all the way through it. Right. An investigation. And that needs to be constantly scrutinized by the government, or constantly, to make sure. Now, right. And this is where we're going to go into another little topic: Freemasonry. Right. My word. Dun, dun, dun. I'm not attacking that. There's Freemasons in the general. There's Freemasons there that might not know what they're getting involved with and all that. But when you had the Hillsborough inquiry, right, it was covered up. I at the time when they had the first one, I was working on a PDF file case in Sheffield. The unit I was on dealing with the kiddie stuff, we were going everywhere, right? Newcastle more than any place, but Sheffield, we had a case there, and I was talking to one of the old school detectives, and he told me, he said, you know, when it kicked off at Hillsborough, when it all went all bandy and wrong, this senior officer that was appointed to oversee it, what they call the Gold Command, was in the control room, because one of the first grounds to have CCTV. He was there with the manager of the football fellow, whatever, who was playing Sheffield United, whatever, I can't remember. And they got drunk. They got hammered. And when it kicked off, the senior officer panicked. He panicked. And then what happened is he hid under the desk, right? And when he was under there, he just went to pieces. Now, when they had the inquiry, they omitted all that they took it all out. And sorry, I just got to move the camera around.
Yeah, that's right, mate.
They took all that out, right? They omitted it. Right. Now, when they had the second inquiry, those that were involved, the investigators that were brought in, they had to take a legal undertaking that they are not or ever have been a Freemason. And that is public knowledge. And the reason they did that, because it was proven that Freemasons had, especially in the Hillsborough inquiry, had deliberately perverted the course of justice. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fact. These things have gone on. And, we have Sir Peter Heyman, head of our intelligence services, that was caught up in a paedophile ring. We had Nicholas Fairburn, the head of the CPS for Scotland, for the Procurator Fiscal, the Advocate Depute. He was not only the QC in charge of all abuse cases on kids, the overseer of all of them. He was also, while that was going on, having an affair with Esther Ranson, who just set up Childline, right. And he was visiting many care homes in Scotland, one of them being Forneath, and he was picked out by 15 out of 20 girls for R-ing them, abusing and R-ing them. And he wanted to bring in reporting restrictions on all abuse cases on kids. Well, of course he did, because he was one of them. So we got to look at who is suppressing all of this. And there you have your answer. Who is pushing for it to be? Look, we had one of the best MPs going, right? Who was out. He was behind people like me. He was behind people like Mikey Veal, who Mike Veal had exposed Ted Heath and what he'd going on. And he was behind a few other whistleblowing policemen. A guy called Andrew Bridgen, right? A Tory MP. He was ostracised by his own party and sacked for speaking out about this. And you know, and he spoke out about, you know, the vaccines and everything else. So he's one of the good guys. But then we got to look at who was suppressing him, and who was doing it. So it's not what they're saying; it's what they're not saying.
Yeah.
You know, and Nigel Farage is cherry picking here, and as our GB News and as our Reform, you know, if you really want to get in and you really want to make a difference, push for an investigation into all of this across the board. And I'm telling you what, you are going to get a third of the population on your side overnight.
100%.
Because
John,
a third of the population have been affected by this sort of criminality.
We're a nation who likes a pound of flesh, right? And when we get close to a subject that could start to touch the upper echelons, the politicians and the judges, that's when they go into panic. And we seem to be in this time where people are becoming so aware of this problem and so many people are talking about it. It sounds like what you're saying is that the government is gearing up for a narrative to give the public a pound of flesh, which seems to be this subsection of the GG gangs that you were talking about.
Listen, all they're ever going to do is give you the low-hanging fruit.
Correct.
Right? That's all they're ever going to do. They're not going to get down to the real stuff that's really going on. That people like myself and Mike Veal, he gave us Ted Heath. He gave us Ted Heath, and what did they do to him? They removed him from post. They destroyed his life. And he went on not only about the R-ing of young boys. He also said that Ted Heath was involved in SRA. It went no further. The media wouldn't report on him. That there's good journalists, but comes an editorial decision, they won't go there. Look, the Attorney General is political appointed. It's a political leverage. So if we've got a right-wing government, we will have a right-wing Attorney General. Now we've got a left-wing government, a Trotskyite government. We will have a left-wing Trotskyite Attorney General, right? AG. So when it comes to prosecuting decisions, like we saw with the Southport rioters, so-called, right? This is why they're being hit with these absolutely obscenely high sentences, because the Attorney General is sanctioning it down to the sentencing judges, and he's giving them orders. You will be doing this, and they, like the weak-minded individuals they are going along with it. And this is the same as when the Home Secretary is lent on by the Prime Minister, who's lent on by some higher-up lobby, that anything to do with abuse cases of kids involving our little gang, right? You are not to go there. They're to be classed as liars. It just ain't happening, right? It ain't happening. You victim blame. And then we see cases like this guy, Nick, can't remember his name. What's his name? It'll come to me in a minute. Who sort of, they said, was a fantasist and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And there's been a couple of other people that have spoken out. There was one woman that spoke out about a politician, and she got hit with £1 million lawsuit. They smashed the victim so hard.
Yeah.
At the same time as having an inquiry, they also have these cases of victims who have so-called cried wolf, and they get hit with the highest of highest sentences, you know, for ridiculously low sentences. And what that does, it sends ripples through. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. And we're going to see that more and more and more until we remove the Attorney General and the government. But what I'm saying now is we've got this apathy, this voting apathy, because no one's got anything in common, right? Now, if you start really, not just because there's going to be people there that, there'll be a lot of survivors there that are saying, yeah, it's appalling about these Kashmiri gangs, but I was a victim, but not of them. What about the kids' home I was in? What about this? What about the priest? What about that? See, if we go look the Catholic Church, the reason why you had PDF file priests in there was, don't get this wrong, but this was something that came out through the findings of the inquiry. It was a way for homosexual men to live an unquestioned lifestyle. And that factually came out about the PDF file priests in Southern Ireland. And I'm not saying in any way that because they're homosexual, they're PDF files. They're not. But there are those that are, and they were using their position to get away with what they were doing. And they weren't looked into because there were so many of them that were doing it. And then some of them were the adjudicators that were put in to look at it. They were of that ilk as well. So it went unnoticed and we uninvestigated. So we had the same with the abuse in the care homes. During the 40s and the 60s, there was a lot of women that were abusing. And women tend to pick women victims, which is very, very strange, I think the majority of those abused by women, 60% are women victims. But that because they came from what were called the war widows, women that had lost their sons, their husbands, their fathers in the war, had become embittered. They became angry, and they ended up getting these jobs in these homes, and they went on to really seriously hurt children. And then that changed in the 70s, and more men were abusing, but become homosexual paedophiles. And the fact is that was because of left-wing politics with equality laws saying that that they're not allowed to check the vetting and the references of any homosexual applicant because it was seen as prejudicial. So they didn't check them at all. There was one care home called Shirley Oaks, had 19 known and some convicted PDF files working in there at one given time. 19, right? So once one gets in, they get their friend in and off it goes. And again, this isn't a slur on homosexuals at all. Stick to what I'm saying. It's homosexual PDF files. Once one gets in,
correct.
And see, and this is where, and then the cover-ups happen and all that. It's gone on a monumental scale. We had the Bindon boys, the boys that were sent out, auctioned into servitude and sexual slavery in Australia, right, and New Zealand and Canada. A brilliant film called Sunshine and Oranges. And the biggest trafficker of children that this country has ever seen, do you know who it was? 40,000 children. 40,000 children sold into servitude and as slavery. Thank you. 1 minute.
That's right. Well, while John's away, there was a couple of points that were put up about Freemasons. Hey, John, do you want to finish your point?
I'll just finish my point. So I just had to collect something from.
That's right, mate.
And the person who did that was Dr. Bernardo. He auctioned 40,000 vulnerable children into slavery and domestic servitude.
Do you know, I don't even know what to say to that, John.
There you go. And so this is
Bernardo was
Bernardo. We need to get a balance here.
It's not like a conveniently just another name. We're talking about Bernardo's, like the children's charity, right? Or it was a children's charity, right?
Yeah. And then if we look at what we started with,
oh my God,
the disclosure by ex-gangster Ray Hill, what he said about the Quay twins, and then their connections indirectly via John Bindon with the royal family, and 4, 5 to 6 up. Come on, it's there in front of your face. Yeah. It's the elephant in the room all the time, right? Look, let's not start looking at what people are saying. Let's look at what they're not saying.
Yeah.
Right. What are they not saying? And it's there. And So, this is my call out. I don't get invited on GB News. I don't get invited on Good Morning or anything like that. BBC do contact me, but then when they realise who I am, they're like, "Oh no, he's a conspiracy."
Yeah, he's that crazy nut, right? He's that crazy nut.
Yeah. Other. I was once told that I'd have a media contract if I didn't work with an activist and survivor of abuse called Billy Maloney, who's the bravest guy I've ever met. The one who really kick-started all the anti-child abuse campaigning. A filmmaker who made probably what should be the best documentary against child abuse, which is Sun Seeing Satan.
Right.
And but he was a tough guy from the streets of Peckham, a fighting fella, and he would take the argument into Parliament. But I was told by another whistleblower, if you step away from him, and you'll get media contracts. And I'm not betraying my friends. I'm not doing that. You can stick your media contracts. I don't want them. The truth is the truth. And what we've been saying on our shows, and what we've been saying with Sean, and the stuff I've done with James English and all these other, it's now coming to fruition.
It is.
Right? It is now coming to fruition. But be careful about concentrating on this
single narrative.
Yeah, I'm
single
not saying
narrative,
because it's
your
it's
point
it's a monoculture, and all monocultures fail, right? And if we look at that, we're not looking over there. And I'm not saying they don't get in, and I don't want really anyone to take that way. That I'm saying this don't exist. Of course they exist. They're dangerous, and they've been deliberately protected by the police and local authorities. But it's not cultural for people to do this. It's not. Do you know what it is for people to do this? It's perverted and it's evil. It's evil. You are ripping the soul out of a child. You are damaging.
Do you know what? There's got to be a worse word than perverted. Do you know what I mean? They're really, it's so beyond perverted. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it really, really is. It's
well, is it again like the word abuse? The child abuse in crime? No, it's not.
It's a destruction
it's
of
the
innocence.
murder of the soul.
Correct.
And it is a perpetrating heroin addiction, alcoholism.
Parasite's a good one, actually. Parasite's a good one. That actually
no, it's not a good one, because a parasite is symbiotic. A parasite does not kill its host.
Yeah,
this
that's true.
Kills its host. This kills its host. There's sometimes there's a benefit with a parasite, but this kills its host, and there is a word for that. I can't remember what it is, but there is a word for it. But it destroys its host, and So look, power, and big up anyone who has exposed these MGGs. God bless you. Yeah. God bless Elon Musk if you are doing this for the right reasons, to kick this government out and to put the focus back on the child survivors. But I call out for all those wannabe PMs out there. Yeah. Start looking at the bigger abuse of children, the CSA, the bigger picture. Yeah. And there you will be doing this great nation a credit if you do that. This is what you'll be doing.
Right. Well, look, we often, John, we talk a lot about the Freemasons, right, and how they seem to be entangled with a lot of these heinous crimes, right? But then we also hear from people who are like, "Oh my God, my granddad was in the Freemasons. Does that mean he was part of this?" And I'm going to give an explanation of how the Freemasons is used very, very well to create these syndicates like this. Because if you're part of the Freemasons and you get to a master level where you're running your local lodge, you've come up through the ranks of your lodge, you're now the top dog in your lodge, you then have the right to set up your own lodge. Okay? So if I'm a PDF and I've got all my PDF pals those are the ones I'm going to bring into the lodge with me. So we're all going up together, right? We've all gone through the Freemasons together, keeping the birds of a feather that flock together. And then that one PDF who got to that position starts his own lodge. He takes all of his own PDF group with him, right? And it spreads. You can create these almost criminal organization lodges just by reaching a certain level. So for everyone who's like, oh, my granddad was it, I get it, right? There's a high percentage of people who aren't aware of a lot of the stuff that goes on there, but it's so easy to corrupt and be a lodge with a sole intention that is not a good intention. So that just to clear up for anybody how, you always hear about the Freemasons being intertwined in this way, but that's how some lodges are pure evil and others aren't, and some are mixed bags. Are you still there, John? You look like you're frozen. Oh, am I still here? Can somebody let me know in the side chat if I'm still here? John has frozen. Okay, that's fine. I'll switch out John here. That's okay. John will be back in a minute. So yeah, it's a very powerful group that has its ties in so many different places. And when you look at the whole foundation of that, where it's a brother before any other and all this kind of stuff, you can see how if you've got an evil Mason member who is being accused of something, and then he's being backed up by two other Masons who don't really know him or anything about his crimes, but because he's a Mason, they're going to back him. It's a really corruptible and powerful system to sort of bend to your will, if you see what I'm saying. But hey, we could also apply that to, textile crimes. There could be organized crimes within the Freemasons that focus on that. Who knows? But that's how susceptible it would be to setting up a criminal lodge like that. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. They all take the oath. Yep. Correct, Amundo. But what an interesting show tonight. It's been such a long time since we've spoken to John, and his passion and his drive. I mean, it's evident to everyone just how key a player John is in this whole mission. Yeah, you see what happens, John. See what happens when you say the word Freemason too many times around you, right?
Yeah, I know.
Your head, the Christian warrior light. Yeah, the Christian warrior light in you just kills it.
I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a case. Oh, we're going back quite a few years now. I can't remember. But it's RV Laws was the case, okay. And it was a police detective who was caught with thousands. Sorry, just got something out. Thousands of really shocking. What I call. Sorry, just get this on here. Level 5 images. So what we discussed earlier, right? Yeah. Now this guy was in the chair, as it were, of a local Freemasonic lodge. Through there, he was involved in organising swinging parties, right? He was a detective, a Scotland Yard detective, covert. You know what these PDF file hunter groups do now? The police have done for decades. They did it a long time before these groups did it, where they just get caught up in chat rooms with little kiddies and they try and find decoy work, they call it, don't they? They put themselves down as a kid and just bit of bait waiting for the old PDF file to chat mark. Anyway, he did that for Scotland Yard and the National Crime Squad, but he was a former intelligence officer for the British Army and served out on a covert capacity in Northern Ireland. So he's got this huge pedigree behind him. But he was in the Freemasons. He was in the chair, as it were, and he was also an organizer of swinging parties. And I worked with a guy, and he told me, and he said, "Oh, you should come to this swinging party." I'm not saying it because trying to make myself out all goody. You'd never get me at one of them places. It ain't happening. It's just no. And I don't want to sound a prude or anything, but no,
of course not, mate.
No way.
I feel like it would be a lot like an episode of An Idiot Abroad. I feel like
yeah. Do you know what I mean? totally. Anyway, yeah, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I love that. Anyway, so, but he said to me, this guy, I didn't know what his personal life was like, but he said to me, oh, there's a judge at the local Crown Court. He goes there. There's guys from the lodge. There's guys from the job, as we call it. They all go there, and it was in a very wealthy suburb of North London, in a very, very Jewish area. Anyway, he ends up dating one of the girls from these swinging parties, and she's a CSA survivor. And I met them in a pub by chance once, and he went to the toilet, and she said, "Oh, he's a bit odd, he's a bit weird," and I met him through this swinging, blah blah blah. Anyway, last day of the next thing I hear, he's putting for early retirement, and I just see him at work, and he went, "Yeah, I'm off. I'm disillusioned with the job. I'm had enough. I'm going to take my pension. I'm running." But what he didn't tell me was that he'd left his laptop around this girl's house, and it was working, and she went through and saw these horrific images of child P and of level 5. She flipped. She attacked him with a knife, and he ran out into the street naked. And I think the police swooped him up, and then it all come out,
Wow.
And now one of these images could get you 18 months in prison. An image. He had 1,000, or it might have been 2,000. Anyway, it's in 1,000.
Oh my God.
Level 5 videos involving children and animals. Right. So with that, he should have gone away and never come out again. Right. He ends up at Crown Court, the same Crown Court where this judge, and I don't know if it's the same judge or not, but the same sessions area as a judge that attends his swinging party. Right. Is that he gets these references from people saying what a good guy he is. He should have got well over 10 years. He gets a community service order and commended by the judge for his covert police and military work. So you tell me, is that some sort of hidden hand, or not, or is it a conspiracy, or is it just coincidence?
This is the thing. And what I was going to say when you were away there, John, and when we look at the Freemasons and how powerful it is, before you get into the corrupted elements of it all, it has very powerful people in high places, if that makes sense.
Of course.
When you create a lodge that is based around these horrible things, and you're already in a society that has these deep-rooted powers, it is so weaponizable.
Let's take this to another level.
Yeah, let's go.
So if we see them as something that potentially can corrupt, as the Hillsborough inquiry officially stated. So again, this isn't a big conspiracy. I know they're a so-called benevolent organisation. I know they give money to charity, and I know there's probably some very deluded good people that are in there that are really maybe intelligent, but base level they're ignorant to really what they're in. Right? Let's take it to another level. If their secret is this veiled threat of throats cut, bellies cut, and all that, which is all a bit allegorical and a bit ancient, and they probably, at the very most, it probably just sponges a lot of their free time and everything else, right? And their money. But let's take it outside that to another level. If that is what bonds them together, you imagine the power of silence when it comes to people that have hard kids or ritually abused kids and maybe even sacrifice kids. Right? Can you imagine the level of secrecy and brotherhood that you have then? Now, if that's the case, that might be why they threaten me. Maybe that's why they try to destroy Mikeville. That maybe why someone like Bullen Forsyth, the social worker who spoke out about the abuse of kids in Lambeth, was murdered and then set on fire. That might be why the intelligence officer, what's his name, Gordon Wallace, who spoke out about the Kincora home abuse and those visiting it, Army intelligence officer Gordon Wallace, he also spoke out about the ritual abuse murder of someone we spent a long time dealing with, Brian McDermott.
Yeah.
Officially, the RUC were told Brian McDermott's murder was satanic. Right, Gordon Wallace in the intelligence service, MI, whatever it was, military intelligence, was also told that. Gordon Wallace was then tasked with setting up fake satanic sites around Belfast and Northern Ireland to take the heat away from that. He was then imprisoned for life and served 10 years for a murder he never even committed. So,
yeah,
and these are people in a position to do
yeah,
that. Now, if the adjudicator for that is also a PDF file,
yep,
such as Nicholas Fairburn, QC, Advocate Deputes, then you're on a no-braining loser, aren't you? You know? And if the judge then is the judge that went to this colleague, PDF colleague, file colleague of mine, if he's then the adjudicating judge, well, it's game over, isn't it?
yep.
So what I'm saying now is not this. We get a lot of people that come out with all this, judges are Freemasons, all police are this, all corrupt, all the Illuminati. I'm not on about that. I get where they're coming from, but they're misguided and they're highly inaccurate. If we want this to have credibility, we need to be accurate and we need to provide evidence.
Yeah.
I sort of have done that in snippets and culminated it in this crescendo here, Ron, in putting this scenario together that when you look at there, it's not beyond all reasonability that this is what is the real secret society, you know?
Yeah.
And so we're really up against it. But what we have got is the fact that a third of the population will be in some way affected by CSA.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to start appealing to them, instead of people's right-wing proclivities at the disgust of what is going on in society, and rightly and understandably so, I get that. But if someone wants to start looking, as an investigator, if one door's shut, you've got to look at other ways of coming in. You've got to look at going through the window, around the back door, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Nigel Farage, whoever these reform and these new independents and all these right-wing people that are coming out, start looking at really the bigger picture of CSA. Start standing and speaking out for the survivors, and you are going to invigorate 30% of the voting age population of this country, and you're going to win. Hands down, you're going to win. Because as much as it is a glue that binds these pervs together, it is also the adhesive that brings the good people together as well.
Yeah.
And all that I've been going on about renting and everything else and podcasts and everything for the last decade, it's now coming to fruition.
Yeah.
The tree is now ready for picking. And I've seen it now. You go onto YouTube and you look at these crime programs. One come out the other day, the case of Leslie Mulseed. Well, me and you did that.
Yeah, we did.
Nearly a year ago, and then the other things. And it's stuff that we've come, Brian McDermott is coming out again and again. Yeah. And, so.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it was probably almost 2 years ago, if I'm being honest, bro. I think we started the year before last, and that was when it was a pre-recorded show before we went to doing the live shows. And a lot of the cases that you covered and we covered was they are coming back into the news. They are being recovered and they are being looked at. Now, it's interesting because you were saying it's right there. This is the time, it's time to push for all of this. And, it's all sort of fallen into place now. The reason why we're going to see the scapegoat narrative being pushed, because there's going to be a lot. If we look at the percentage of the pie of people who are aware of the situation, even more now than ever, there's going to be a large section of them that are going to switch off from this after a great, takedown of some GG gangs and all of this stuff. And they've got their pound of flesh. And it's quite scary when you know the truth and you see the bigger picture and you see how these narratives are used. Not just, great, we're going to save some kids by dealing with these GGs, but when it's used as a shield and as almost like a look over here at the shiny to protect the bigger picture, which is why, which is where your passion stemmed from the start of this, John. It's like, yes, these things are happening, but it's a small percentage, and there's a bigger picture. The people that are pushing for these legislations are probably some of the individuals allegedly behind some of the most worst atrocities.
Okay. Well, this is what we do then.
Yeah.
We have a national investigation into this, right? And we go mercilessly, after these people, right? Whether they're Kashmiri, they're Muslim, whether they're rabbi, whether they're Christian, whatever.
It doesn't matter who they are. They're PDF.
And we get them. They get their doors kicked in, right? They get their bank accounts seized, their assets seized. They get remanded, and they get a visit from our investigators, Exile Bill, the real boys, and we go, right, we'll do a deal with you, but you tell us everything you know. You watch them start grassing, and it will start going up and up the food chain. And then they'll say, look, Councillor so-and-so knew about it, did nothing right. Malfeasance. We have the malfeasance squad go in there and start bringing in these chief constables, these chief inspectors, these superintendents that knew about it and did nothing. We start bringing them in, and we start reminding them, kicking their doors in, seizing, their assets and their data storage devices, nick them at their golf clubs and, their nice middle-class lifestyle that they're now wallowing in. And we put pains on them. And we do the same to them. We say, right, okay, here you are now. You're in here. You tell us who told you to hide that file. Who was it? Give me a name. Not them, a name. Yeah, it was so-and-so. It was, chief constable, whatever. Right, he gets brought in. And then it was the local government. They bring them all in. Malfeasance carries a life sentence. And all this stuff against kids carries big sentences as well. And so does the R crime. It carries a life sentence. Start doing to them what two-tier care has done to the rioters, the so-called rioters. Give them maximum pain and no mercy. But the offer of being an informant, and maybe, just maybe, you'll get out of here. And I'm telling you now, you will turn it around in a heartbeat. Within a year, you watch it. You watch it happen. And I've done it. I've seen it happen now. I did it with Turkish organised crime. I did it with the G gangs run by Fiona Walsh in Westminster, in Kilburn, and all of that. We did it. We smashed it. And that's awesome, all of a sudden, we've got people high up. But anyone who comes it, they get brought down as well. And, that's it. And it takes a strong leader to do it and to say that. But and if anyone that politically minded wants someone to give them a bit of advice, I'll give it them. I'll show them exactly how to do it. I show exactly how to investigate a crime and how to bring pain on these people. And you right, there was a brilliant documentary years ago, and it was about a housing estate in the north of England, which had horrific crime rate, and that it accounted for like 80% of all the disorderly and antisocial crimes in this town, and the police just weren't dealing with it. They weren't dealing with it, and a local housing officer, he just had enough of it. So he went to this estate, and he realised that these kids zooming around in nick cars and burglar houses all came out of 3 or 4 houses on that estate. And what he realised was that out of them houses on the estate, they're the ones that had no fence, that didn't bother cutting their lawn, put old bikes and mattresses in there. Now, part of the thing you sign, the contract, is that you maintain your house to a reasonable standard. Well, these shite houses weren't doing it, so he made it simple. He went, well, police aren't doing it, I'll deal with this. So he said, right, you don't cut your grass, you're evicted. And of course they didn't, and he offered them a lawnmower to do it, and of course they weren't interested, so he evicted them. Right, he got rid of them. Overnight, 80% crime drop without one person getting hit by the police. But on top of that, he had financial incentives from the money he saved, because of all the violence and all the disorder. He had a gardening club. So he said that whoever has the best garden gets $3,000. And people started cutting their lawns and doing fish ponds. And pride was put back in the community. Crime was almost non-existent. And this one guy did it on his own. Now, if he can do that, well, sure enough, a proper leader can do that with the child abuse. Can do it like that.
Do you know, John, we've started a little something here as a community, right? I don't know if you've seen, I'm going to start putting some stuff up on the screen here, John, right? We've got a lot of people in the side chat that have got this little symbol. You can see this symbol over the flags here. You can see another one here, another one here. And this is a little symbol that we put together to create a movement to unite people against all forms of cruelty against children, right? But it's to send a message to local predators that people have had enough. So put some stickers up on lampposts, you put them little pamphlets in your local businesses, and the walls start closing in around these individuals. And we are doing a podcast every week covering all the missions and things like this that we're doing behind the scenes. I'm back doing the shutting down of the websites and all the stuff that I used to do, John, and the exposés and things like this. And John is frozen again, and John's back. So
Yeah, keep going.
We've got our own little movement started, and it's going really, really well, and people are behind it, and it just shows that when people are brought together and everything else is left at the door, politics, your whatever, all those things, all the big things, right? And you're just united for one common cause, almost like a brotherhood or a sisterhood or whatever. People are rallying behind it, and it's exciting to watch it grow and see all of that. But I'll speak to you in the DMs, mate, but I'd love to get you on little project that I'm doing. So I sent you the videos and stuff that I put together. I don't know if you
no, everything's an awareness. But what we need, we need a unit with the authority.
Of course,
to go in there and to start lawfully, not vigilante wise, but lawfully, a proper vetted unit.
Yeah.
Because some people that purport to help, and they want to come on board, they're dirty. I've had it. I've set up groups, and the next thing they've destroyed it from inside. I've just had it with a copper saying, "I'm like you. I'm a whistleblower. I'm blah blah blah. Oh, please, can you get behind me and all this?" And he's just been convicted of indecent exposure at court, and he knew that. Yet he came to me as some sort of innocent victim, but with proper vetting, like the police and the government would do. This country.
We have to fix the government first, John. The problem we have, you've lived the problem we have, is good men in positions to make change are given terrible teams and not enough budget and are silenced.
But it can be turned around. Look, El Salvador had probably the most notoriously violent and corrupt police force the planet's ever had, right? It's now one of the most decent, upstanding, uncorrupted police forces ever, because they totally got rid of all the corruption, right? They trained them properly, they housed them, they looked after them, and they gave them proper direction, and they went to war. Right? Yeah. Rwanda, the same. Rwanda, a country that was war-torn, that was full of corruption now, it's almost clean of any street crime now. It can be done. If the third world can do it, then surely a country and a nation such as us, that was a benchmark, the bastion of policing, the inception of it, of uncorruptible policing, surely we can pull it back. And unfortunately, they got caught up in all this woke agenda, equality, diversity. And listen, when I joined the police, it was pretty raw, okay? I worked with gay officers. I worked with so many lesbians, right? We didn't care for any of that. We worked as a team. That's not the issue. The gay and lesbian thing is not the issue. It's always been there, and no one cared. The only people who got ostracized were those that were idiots and tossers. They were the ones that got a hard time, and some gingers, bless them. But, I know, they got bullied more than anyone else. And no one really, really cared for people, And it's the same with racism within there. Okay, I'm not what you would say is a visibly ethnic group, but I never saw any real direct, overt internal racism. Out in the street, a bit different. Internally, I didn't see it, right? I'm not saying it weren't there, but I'm just saying I never saw it. And I saw it, my colleague, he said the same. So, that was it. But what they've done, they've destroyed it now with all these little minority groups infighting. And when they're infighting and splitting and dividing, the devil comes to cause division and disharmony and disruption and discord. And this is what they've happened. And while we're in fighting, this is a chaos that goes on, that ensues. We need to get rid of all of that complicated, twisted, knotted red tape. Get rid of it and get back to what we should be doing: protecting society's vulnerables, and have a squad of dedicated, no nonsense individuals, and really, really go to work on the kids, not on gun crime. On that'll all fall into place. You watch it; it'll all fall into place bit by bit by bit. Deal with those who hurt the kids, and you watch the whole lot crumble. But work on spying, really, informants and stuff like that, and it'll happen. Now, I want to say about success. We did a program about Roger Gleaves, a guy that was patrolling around the streets of Lambeth back in the 70s and early 80s and procuring kids and hurting them, right? Yeah. Because of what we put out, I've had survivors of him contact me.
Oh, wow.
Survivors of him contact me.
That's wild.
Because of what we put out. So, and there's one that I'm going to liaise with quite shortly, and the information is going right into the core of the establishment. So we've done it. We cracked that nut one. We did it. That's on here.
Wild, yeah. Just two guys on the internet. Just two guys on the internet having a chat.
Yeah. Now let's see if we can take it now to that other level. Let's see if these big media agencies and all those, the political groups can start jumping on board with what we've been doing and start lobbying properly and let's work as one and we'll sort this. We'll sort this.
I agree. I mean, listen, it's just a simple task. It's just a simple one point mission, completely eradicate global child cruelty. It's an easy one, John. And I tell you what, mate,
and we can do it.
We'll get it done. We'll get it done. And we all know it's an interesting year, 2025. A lot of people becoming aware of a lot of things, and I think there's never been a better time to expose so many atrocities around the world, especially with what's going on with certain rappers and certain court cases out in America. There's so many eyes on not just where the buck stops with us, the regular folk, where it stops at celebrity or politician, but eyes are starting to go onto the next level and the next level and a bigger picture.
Well, look at it this way, right? When I first spoke out, I thought I was alone, I was frightened, and they're pretty much ripping me up like a rag doll. And then I started going on the social media, and then I linked in with Sean, with the other podcasters. Within a very, very short period of time, millions and millions of people had heard my content. Other people started coming forward, speaking out. So now when they have these scandals, the only narrative was the media. Now we have this alternative narrative. They can't get away with it. And I'm not saying I and you take all the credit for it.
Of course
but
not.
We've got to give ourselves a pat on the back.
Of course.
For enlightening so much of the public. Because a lot of people don't want to tell you now. They watch these things. I get recognised in the street and I get commended. And I get told, keep going, keep speaking out. I was one of them kids. I was in a care home. It happens daily on the street. I get it. If I get on a train, I've had it come out an announcement. I want to say thank you. On the train, the driver saw me get in and put an announcement. So
that's awesome, bro.
And they listen to this. They watch this. I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to have to dash shortly, but I want to tell you this. When I was on the Vice unit dealing with this terrible stuff, there was another lad there, and me and him went to do an inquiry involving Turkish organised crime, and we nearly got shot. It was a dangerous thing. I was reckless. I didn't really do the proper intel, and it was just typical of how I worked, really, it was all right with me, but I took this lad along, and we both nearly got killed that day, and it sort of stayed with him for quite a bit of time. Anyway, he left the police, and he went to work for local government in the Northern Territories of Australia, and so via someone else, he contacts me about a month ago, and they said, "Can you pass John's number on to a third party, to this guy?" Anyway, we end up having a chat on WhatsApp, and you know, he just said, I still can't forgive you for that day, Johnny, you know. And he said, anyway, he said, look, Australia's not like England. He said, apart from the cities, they don't have pubs like we have. You can't just go to a local pub and have a pint. And he said, and as an ex-copper and an Englishman, he said, I want to have a pint, and a northerner. He wanted to have a pint. And he said that the nearest bar was an old colonial bowls club 40 miles into the outback of the Northern Territories, you know, the tropical wasteland, you know, Crocodile Dundee country.
Yeah.
He said there's this bowls club there for something that, you know, the colonials left behind. Anyway, it was all like mahogany panelled and all this sort of stuff. And he goes to join it, and he has to go before the committee. And they see his CV, and the chairman of the committee says, you know,
for the bar.
Well, because it's part of the bowls club, so in order to gain access to this old
that's fine. I'm just making sure I haven't missed anything. I was making sure I
this British style bar. He has to join the club, so but it's the nearest thing to an English pub, you know. And he said,
it's the only pub, John. It's the only pub
for like 40 square miles around, you know. And the chairman of the club says, you know, you're an ex-Scotland Yard detective. Worked on the paedophile unit and all that, and he said, yeah, I was. He said, by any chance, did you ever work with a guy called John Wedger? And he went, oh my God. He puts his head in his hand. He went, yeah. He went, what is the problem? He went, well, he nearly got me killed, but he's a good guy. And,
can I ask you, John, was that the day that you accidentally rumbled that flat full of the H from that gang?
Yeah,
and that was the guy. That was that guy.
That was the guy that was a copper that was with me. You know, and it was. Anyway, it was anyway, it was a little bit
listen, I tell you what, next week we'll get John to tell you that story. He's told it before, but that's my favorite campfire story with John.
But the guy, he said, yeah, I do know him. He said, look, once a month we watch his videos. So they have a John Wedger evening in this pub, this bar in the middle of the Northern Territories.
Middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So they watch our stuff as well out there. So
well, listen, big shout out. If this ever makes it to that pub in the outback, okay, please, if you're in Australia, start killing all those little spiders that kill people that are about the size of your fingernail. You need to wipe them out. There's no need for them to live among us, okay?
And the tiny little jellyfish as well. And
basically, if it's smaller than your thumbnail and it can unalive you, right, just get rid of it, mate. Just get rid of it.
Yeah, they've got some nasty things out there, haven't they? So, so that was, you know, something that, you know, it made me chuckle them years later. So the word's getting out there. The word's getting out to the Northern Territories, and so
big shout out the Northern Territories. Big shout out the Aussies.
So this I will send this out to them, and so there you go. All right. So anyway, I'm going to have to dash, but
that's all right,
God bless, and
we'll
thank
see you next week.
For this platform.
Yes, we'll see you all again next week. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to John. Thank you to the Sean Atwood channel. Thank you all for being part of this, and we'll see you all next week. You lovely, lucky.
And whoever watches this, do us a favour. Send this to GB News. Send it to Reform. Send it to UKIP. Send it to all these wannabe, you know, leadership parties. Send it to them. Send it to them. Let's see what they come up with.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And listen, I just want to say thank you to everyone once again. We will shows will be put up in the morning for this week. I'm back every single day. I'm experimenting with start times again for the daily show, so it'll either be 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And I'm going to be hopefully experimenting this week with a morning show with me and Dan. So stay tuned for that. And then, all the usual shows are happening. But we'll be back next Sunday with John, the legend, the man himself. And I just want to say thanks again, John, for your time. Thank you to everybody who's watching. Please like and share, and we will see you all in the next one. Peace.
God bless everyone.